Look at you, look around us. People unhappy. We are totally disconnected with the brain and the body. It's so many people live in their heads and they don't live with emotions. So something must be deeply wrong.
The world is changing so fast, and we are stuck in our old ways of doing things.
You know, we're complex beings. We're mind, body, spirit. And when the pressure's on, we tend to just focus on the rational mind. We shut ourselves down. If we can't see inside ourselves, we can't use our greatest capabilities, and we'll never let our own intuition flow. I find that at the highest level, all decisions are intuitive. Look, if they weren't, we could just run them off on computers. We'd have all the answers. In the last 20 to 25 years of my life, we've seen the dominance of rational thought. And it's dominated a lot of our academic institutions, it's dominated the media, and it's taken away from the capacity to really advance the intuitive skills. But I think we're now, for the first time, we're starting to realize that problems are not getting any better. We have to step back and take a whole new approach to these problems. One of the challenges we've had recently in business is by going to this fully rational side and by focusing everything on the near-term measurement, analytical tools, we have ground out or expunged creativity from our companies. Tens of billions, hundreds of billions of dollars are being wasted. We think by more work, we get more work done. This is simply not true. I have students here at Harvard that used to say, oh, I worked for 100 hours a week. Look, you cannot sustain that. You get lost in the numbers. You get lost in logic. You don't give yourself a chance to pull back.
Is intuition reliable?
So one way to define reliability might be to say how accurate is my intuition in guiding my judgments or my decisions. And there I would have to say it is not very reliable. When I see you, my first instinct or my intuition might be to judge you by what I see. And, you know, if you are a woman, then some stereotypes that I have about women might come into mind. So seeing really is believing. And seeing affects our intuition. So if I do not see women in leadership positions, I don't think women can be leaders. If I do not see men as kindergarten teachers or nurses, I don't think men can do a good job in that.
So our own biases can be dangerous when we take decisions or judge other people. But isn't intuition something more than that? I read a book that says human beings are stuck in logic and left-brain thinking. So what are the dangers of having a culture dominated by the left hemisphere? And how is it in real life shaping Western culture?
Well, I think that we can possibly recognize some of what I would see as aspects of the left hemisphere's world in the world around us now. Our world seems like a heap of fragments that it's hard to see how they cohere. And the sort of understanding that used to enable us to see what things mean has been lost, so that wisdom has been replaced by knowledge, and knowledge has been replaced by information, pieces of data, chunks of data. For evolutionary reasons, we have had to be able to attend to the world in two different ways. We need to be able to relate to the world at large, at the same time as manipulating it. And we need both of these approaches to the world, the narrow focused one and the broad, open, sustained, vigilant one. And these are the differences basically between the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere. Now the trouble is that over time I think that what has happened is that this narrowly focused attention, which actually doesn't see the whole picture, has begun to take over, and we have begun to believe it is the only way to look at the world. It's actually easier to rehabilitate somebody after a left hemisphere stroke than it is after a right hemisphere stroke. On any medical ward where somebody's been admitted with a stroke in their right hemisphere, you go to see them and say, how are you feeling this morning? Any problems moving your left arm? No? Left side, so that their right hemisphere is still operative. They're devastated by their losses.
Well, intuition is letting the whole of your brain flow. You know, we think so much of as left brain people of the logical side of our brain. But intuition is often built upon a base of experience and all of one's life experience, and it grows over time. And so, yes, it's the right side of the brain, but it's letting all those creative side of your brain flow so you can think creatively about the world and how you see things, and be able to take a series of relatively disparate thoughts and put them together in some kind of integrative whole. And I think that's where great decisions and great ideas come from. The challenges we face today of poverty, of overpopulation, of our environment, energy in the environment, of education, of war, of global health, those problems are intractable, have been around for a very long time. Why? Because we haven't brought ideas together from different disciplines. If you just keep trying to solve the problem the same way you have and you failed, you're just going to repeat history. If you try to eliminate war just by doing what you've been doing the last 200 years, you're just going to keep going to have more wars.
First thing that I ask people to do is just go out into nature and see if you can sit in nature for 5 minutes, experiencing nature through all of your senses without thinking. For most modern people, that's really tough. You know how we look for stuff outside ourselves? Oh, it's over there, it's over there, I have to take another course, I have to... It's awareness here and now on the world, and that's everything. You know, modern people in general are really not in touch with intuition. They're not in touch with how we know things. We have let our awareness drift from the world around us to the world that we have made, the world of form, the world of our maps going from A to B to C, the world of strategy, the world of milestones and deadlines and endpoints. And we've forgotten how to be aware of the world around us, of sensory data, of many of the dimensions of life. Imagine our beautiful average 3-pound brain. 98% of our brain does not use language or logic or belief or strategy. It creates those things for us, but it doesn't use them. The other 2% receives what the 98% creates and goes out in the world and takes an action, goes to the grocery store, goes to work, comes home, that sort of thing. That's what neuroscientists call our relational mind. It's in a relationship, it's making relationship between bits of data. The linear mind is the 2% left over. 2% of 3 pounds is 0.96 ounces, which is barely 2 tablespoons of brain tissue. I give this to my students. I think, consider this, people. You are awake in a scant 2 tablespoons of your brain, and what about the rest of it, right?
So how does one listen to his or her intuition?
We start with tiny little practices that you can do between your front door and the car, literally. You can do them at stoplights. You can do them in the grocery store. In fact, you should. Tiny little exercises that teach you how to bring awareness to your sensing intelligence, how to actually feel the world. The Polynesians were able to map almost the entire Pacific Ocean without a tool because they listened to the ocean. They were totally connected through their senses, and they passed that knowledge down through at least 8 generations, and nobody forgot a detail. You have to have your awareness on the world around you. We can't do that anymore.
When Marty told me about the ancient Polynesian navigators who had this extensive capacity that we have lost, I could hardly believe it.
I am an ocean explorer. I spend a lot of time going to places of which we know very little about. The most remote places in the ocean. Places without people, without fishing. Places that are like time machines that look like the ocean 500 years ago. If we knew what we were going to find, we wouldn't go. That experience, spending a lot of time studying and observing this pristine ecosystem, the ocean of the past, has helped me enormously to develop this intuition about what's wrong with the ocean today and also how to bring it back. And I love the example of the Polynesian navigators, where these people on small canoes traveled for hundreds of miles on unknown, uncharted ocean without knowing where they were going. They had an amazing amount of knowledge about the system. They knew the waves, the currents, the clouds, the winds, the stars. They could read the state of the sea. They could know if there was an island in the distance because of the reflection on a cloud. So they had this intuition about whether there was land where they were going. The Polynesians had collected that massive amount of knowledge over many generations, and it became part of their collective unconscious. And that happened many centuries ago. And the Polynesians didn't have our GPS and computer technology. They had stick charts. If you put somebody from the middle of Europe in one of these canoes in the Pacific Ocean, I'm telling you, they are not going to last very long. They were able to do that only because they spent so much time experiencing the ocean firsthand. Now, we still have explored less than 5% of the ocean. That's what makes that ancient knowledge so extraordinary.
Our brains are constantly evolving, depending on how we feel, think, and what we experience. This affects how we build knowledge. But today we are bombarded with information and distraction all the time. How can intuition help us sense the world and our place in it more wisely?
Intuition is not just some pink and fluffy feeling. Intuition is the awareness of the subtle stuff which lies outside the focus of attention. The stuff that we're aware of subliminally, unconsciously, and if we spend too much time in the stance of our very focused conscious mind, we will not see why that should be important. It doesn't seem to be present, it doesn't seem to matter, one therefore cuts it out. But in fact, in doing so, we're cutting out most of what it is we know, because, in fact, very little of our mental processes are conscious. Most of them, at least 95%, possibly nearer to 99% of them, are not conscious at all. And they act to alert us to things that our rather slow conscious mind may not be aware of. They therefore are often implicit things, subtle things. For example, you may meet a person and you cannot put your finger on it. This person seems extremely friendly, gives messages that make you want to trust them. But at some level you think there's something wrong here, and you cannot actually articulate what it is. And of course you might be wrong. But very often you are picking up something very important, because when we communicate, most of our communication is not in fact explicit at all. It's in tone of voice, it's in implied meaning, in the choice of words, it's in metaphor, humor, irony, and so on. So intuition is in touch with those things, and so to rule it out is to miss most of the wise things that we could know.
I met Tan Lee while studying. Last time I heard, she was designing brain scans. We wanted to know if intuition can be seen in the brain.
Intuition, it's something that we haven't studied in any great detail. This idea of being able to measure or even observe intuition is a new phenomenon. I think in the last decade, there's been more interest from a science standpoint to try and quantify and understand intuition. But I think early findings suggest that it will be possible for us to understand the frameworks that really form the basis for allowing us to have this sense of knowledge from within.
You know, if you think about it, why do we feel we need to measure everything, including intuition? As if it's something that we can quantify. Apparently, we have hundreds of neurons in our stomach that affect the decisions we take. All the moments I've felt a knot in my stomach, or my stomach has been full of butterflies. What are these feelings telling me? And can I trust them? The performance artist Marina Abramović broke visitor records in the Museum of Modern Art in New York. People waited in line. They even slept outside to get a chance to sit in front of her and look her in the eye.
My function was to be there present 100% for them. How to achieve that is very important, the pattern of breathing. You know, every time you breathe faster, your concentration is less. But if you breathe rhythmically and slowly, and then you can achieve that kind of state of mind, that of the moment, and then that can connect you with the person in the front of you. so that you really can make the non-verbal communication possible. I've experienced with the people sitting in the front of me with very negative energy, with very good energy. I experienced so many people who have in tremendous pain, and they project on me, and I can feel the pain. And I was just a mirror. You know, the important thing in this piece was the human being will never go and sit on the chair alone in this house and do nothing. But because of this museum, I create some kind of platform, like a stage, and the people have to wait, and the waiting was also part of the process. And then the moment you finally come and sit in the front of me, you're watched by the other people, you're filmed, and you're watched by me. So you're nowhere to escape, nowhere, except into yourself. And when that happens, that connection, you know, really click. And then you really start being with your own self, which we actually avoid to do all your life. And I think that one of the success of this piece was because it was not verbal. It was not about explaining emotions, it was about feeling them directly. After I sit for such a long time, 736 hours in MoMA, finally the American scientists got very interested in me. And they proposed me if I would do experiment 1 year here in America. Later on, the Russians got interested. So finally we end with this big symposium on the database of research on my brain. There are different subjects sitting in the front of me. I would just look at them, and they can really measure the wavelengths of each brain and see what kind of information it's sending. They told me that my brain activity is much stronger than anybody else. My wavelengths are longer and brighter, and the kind of intensity is very strong, so that actually participants can, you know, really react on that, and this brain reacting it, and it's all on subconscious level.
It is changing radically the way in which we can start to undertake research around the brain and how our brain structures interact with each other, how different neurons synchronize and desynchronize in response to different types of behaviors and activities and learning. When two people have the same set of oscillations, we call that neural synchrony. We can actually see it now in real time, when it happens, as it happens. Couples who have lived together for many decades, who are still very, very much in tune with each other, when you take them in two separate rooms and you ask them to recall very similar types of events, their brain activates similar networks. It's basically a moment or a series of moments where two brains are acting in concert, when they're thinking and recalling the same types of activities or the same experiences, which would suggest that they are highly in tune with each other. In layman's terms, it's like being on the same wavelength. Very, very interesting studies, which, you know, might seem to suggest why they're still together at this time.
You know, it's really interesting to see how the artists work as scientists and see the relationship. You know, the scientists will sit in laboratory for years and years and, you know, try to discover certain microbe or whatever atom, and there will nothing happen. And then they will, you know, just go and make the walk on the ocean, and idea will just click, and they will find the discovery, which become revolutionary. How that happen? It's the same way the artists do. You know, you have to first put everything of yourself into the work. You have to give 100% of your own self to the entire, the last atom of your energy. And then when you know that you've done everything, you actually have to let it go, because you can't do more than you've done. And And then the things happen by itself. And that's what comes intuition in it. It happens same with every big discovery, from science, from technology, from art, from architecture, poetry. The writers of writing great books, it comes from that moment. There's a moment when you're not expecting, not when you are actually doing it. I think that one of the most frightening moments in human history was when we think in those days, in the past, that the earth was not a circle, but was a plate. And then can you imagine Colombo in those days? He was going to find different ways to go to India. He was going to the complete unknown because he didn't know where was the second road to India, and he had the possibility to fall off the earth into complete hell. Can you imagine falling off the earth? How frightening is that? And then he took it, that journey. He took this courage to go into unknown and find America. So to me, going to unknown is the absolutely rule number one. We never can change our life or ourselves if you do things we like. We are always in the same pattern, the same shit. We are, falling in love with the same wrong guy. We are repeating our lives all over again because we always like doing what we like, and it's so easy. But if you take the journey and you do things you don't like, you're afraid of, and complete unknown territory, then it's big possibility that you will go into different pattern, and something else will happen, an experience will change you. But also there's a big chance of failure. And I think failure is such an important aspect of everybody's life that we have to really be ready to fail. Because if you experiment, you don't know what is going to happen. So the failure has to be part of the journey.
When I resigned from my permanent job at the UN, I didn't know what would happen next. Nature was my consolation.
I love what the Dagara elders say in West Africa. They say that we've been given 5 senses because we're intended to have multiple views of the world at once, all the time. So we're in relationship with the world in a lot of different ways all the time, and we're taking in many, many interrelated pieces of data, and we're never confused by this.
Mother Earth is this symbol of the generous womb that gives nourishment, life, and vitality to all that lived in it. Nature is actually the silent witness of intuition. Nature speaks in all kinds of languages. Nature is interested in the inner eye, the inner ear, the inner capacity to make sense out of something which external consciousness might consider chaotic. Without nature, I don't know how we can revive our intuition. What would it be if Westerner were to lend a little bit of credence, give trust to the power of their intuition. Allowing their intuition to be the platform upon which to connect with their past, their present, and their future. What is blocking our connection in this world is noise. A lot of it.
And Johnny Chainsaw.
Oh, there's a chainsaw.
Is it take two?
For me, at this juncture, and within the context of what we're talking about, intuitive.
Yes. Yes, hello. Hi, I'm fine, thank you. How are you doing, Melitoma? This is like the essence of our interview, which is taking place now.
That's right. Oh, God. Distraction. We call that entertainment. The noise of the external world is muting the sound of the internal world. And therefore, our intuition pays the price for it.
What Melitoma is saying makes a lot of sense to me. We need to rethink how we sense the world. Our brains are wired to the environment around us. Hendrik Sala, the ocean explorer, immerses himself in the ocean to embody the knowledge of it. And I wonder, how do children shape themselves with a culture that surrounds them? What kind of an ocean of information and stimuli are children immersing themselves in? There's a darker side to all this interconnectivity. Instead of bringing us closer, it might be doing the reverse. Making us more disconnected from ourselves, each other, and the world around us.
Rockstar Games' satirical crime series has regularly topped sales charts, but has just as often been presented as Exhibit A in the debate over whether violent video games incite violence in players.
I think the important thing that's important to remember is that there are many things that you can do in Grand Theft Auto. Some of them I think are distasteful. Well, I guess a lot of them are at some level distasteful. But I don't necessarily think that the violence in Grand Theft Auto against women, obviously it's problematic at a very base level, but I think if you were to look at it in the landscape of broader media, it wouldn't necessarily be anomalous.
So let me get this straight. This brutal violence against women has become so common in broader media and computer games like Grand Theft Auto that we shouldn't see it as a problem? What does that mean exactly? That violence is becoming a normal entertainment for children? One of the shocking examples of violent behavior and lack of empathy towards others is the Richmond rape case in the United States.
Police say at least a dozen people watched a 15-year-old girl get beaten and gang raped and did nothing.
It was a mob that took over.
I feel like I could have done something, but I don't feel like I have any responsibility for anything that happened.
Where's the spirituality? Where's the compassion of those who just watched and did nothing?
We live in a world where every 1 in 3 to 5 women have experienced gender-based violence.
That's right.
Do you think this is something to do with our disconnection to intuition?
This is so matter of fact. I wonder why you asked the question. The truth is, our disconnection with Earth translates into a kind of disrespect of the feminine.
I have the right of education, I have the right to play, I have the right to sing, I have the right to talk, I have the right to go to market, I have the right to speak up.
The Taliban targeted the 15-year-old Malala Yousafzai and her friends. He asked for Malala by name and then he shot her.
How far can you go in violating the mother that gave you life? As long as the feminine is diminished, the connection between us and the earth is going to be always underscored by a big question mark. We have abused the earth so much that we don't know which direction to go. We must wonder what the connection between this increasing masculinity that is translated in terms of repeated violence or the love of it.
The work I do is in conflict resolution, negotiation. There's a wholly different way of dealing with people that draws upon intuition and emotion and rationality rather than just seeing the world as a realpolitik world where power is all that matters, power exclusive of emotions and human beings. What are we teaching our children? Math, absolutely important. Language, absolutely important. But at the end of the day, our world is a functional world. We need to act in this world. We need to interact in this world. That takes a certain set of skills. Skills in understanding what other people are feeling, knowing what we're feeling. That's the intuitive piece. And again, I think there needs to be that space in the curricula for students.
At Addison School in London, they take an unconventional approach to children's learning called Mind Up. It combines mindfulness practices with science to build children's emotional skills and help them cope in a busy world.
Okay, you can open your eyes now.
The amygdala is the emotional part of the brain, and we also call it the guard dog. For example, so if I'm crossing a road and then I saw a car, the car would come, I would know that it would come in because the amygdala would aware me, so I would jump back.
The prefrontal cortex is a bit of your brain that will help you with your learning and it will make you a better person so you can be really calm. It helps you do the right decisions. That makes your prefrontal cortex a wise owl.
The hippocampus is your saver. It saves all your good and bad memories. if you didn't have your hippocampus in you, we don't really get to be a positive thinker, optimistic. We'll just be pessimistic and a negative thinker.
You need to let those juices flow. You need to let the creative side of your being flow. You need to be intuitive. How do you do that? The only way to do it that I know is to have habits or practices that you practice every day. And people will tell you, I don't have the time. I'm far too busy. Actually, it gives you so much more energy. One of those are mindfulness practices. So the little trivial things kind of wash away. And so what's left at the end of all that is clarity about how to see the world.
Children in schools today will probably be doing jobs in the future that don't even exist yet. We have so many options for how we prepare them for the future. It's been truly inspiring to see new ways of thinking in schools around the world, helping children regain their confidence and imagination. In India, School in the Clouds helps children access the internet and discover the world for themselves.
We got the internet!
The world is limitless. Grandmothers in Britain share knowledge with children in India. Another example is from Bali, where parents have set up a nature school. The time children spent in nature has decreased dramatically over the years to the detriment of their well-being. But nature enhances children's sense of belonging, happiness, and resilience. In Iceland, schools are teaching girls and boys to build relationships on trust and care. They believe expansive surroundings can help broaden mindsets and induce creativity. So when children find it difficult to sit still and concentrate in the classroom, they are invited to let off steam and run around. The Mind Up program brings together ancient wisdom and new scientific discoveries. It helps children let the stillness within interact fruitfully with the fast world around them.
It's this tremendous library that every one of us has inside of us. You have the ability to use that library. You're already fluent in what it says. We all are fluent. Are we going to use that information to make the wisest decisions we can? Not only the smartest decisions we can, but the wisest decisions we can.
Humans are changing. Our species is changing. We'll probably be merging with machines soon. Everything is constantly changing, but the way in which we move forward is very much open for interpretation. And we can push it in different ways, and as artists, as creators, as writers, as thinkers, as speakers, like when you put stuff out into the world, if enough people start to believe in the things that you put out into the world, that thing will end up becoming more likely to happen. And on the other side of the coin, you have lots of people putting forth really like fear-based visions of the future. And you turn on Fox News or CNN or a lot of these news websites, and it's all hysteria and panic and collapse and crisis and this and that, and the world is melting and the financial system is collapsing and there's no jobs and all this stuff. And that is a vision of the future you can choose to believe, but you can equally choose to believe a different one. And I think it's important to get as many people as possible on board with a different one, because then that'll happen.
Imagine for a moment that we are made up of two rhythms. One breathes in, the other one out. One reflects, while the other one reacts. One feels, while the other one calculates. When Shiloh learned how to balance the two rhythms by consciously sensing the world from the inside out, not just from the outside in, his life changed. After being exposed to all this wisdom and knowledge, I realized that there had been a missing link between my inner world and the world around me. To see within is to know yourself. To know yourself well enough to be able to put yourself into other people's shoes and to bring out the best in you.
Purpose is the foundation of human life on this plane. What it does is that it deletes the sense of randomness. And by doing that, it provides a certain kind of deeper meaning and recognition to the human being as such. And actually, it serves to keep the intuitive alive. Because if I have purpose, therefore I know that it is not somebody else. It's not school. It's not institution that told me that I have purpose. It is the whole world that is looking at me as a purposeful entity. What we are experiencing has an answer deep inside our bones. And if we were to move away momentarily from the distraction of this world and all the written unshakable truth associated with the external world, we will find that there are subtle answers whispered into the inner ears, carried by our intuitive channels. Therefore, I need to get inside myself, activate my intuition so it can spell out that purpose for me.
I think our world has a long ways to go to be able to really embrace this growing movement of intuition and to recognize it's not soft. It's hard stuff. It's just as hard as math and science and economics.